Patch 25.23 is one of the bigger patches we've received in recent times. This time around, a lot of top laners are now put into the jungle. Some of them love engaging. And then we have the introduction of Zahan. So let's see how this impacts the ADC meta. One of the bigger buffs that happened to any of the bot lane champions is actually Mel. One of the major reasons why she has moved up in my list is because now that her passive deals a lot more damage, her reliance on her E is much lower, which is why she's gone from the A tier to the S tier. Not to mention the fact that mages in bot lane are kind of OP if your champions don't have dashes. There are champions that are really dash reliant in the meta right now, such as Corki, Lucian, Ezreal, and Unark. At the end of the day, AD carries that are hyper carries that don't have those dashes are gonna suffer. Another champion that kind of moved up in the list was actually Jhin, are helping his scaling and his laning. So you might look at this 2 AD buff and think to yourself, I mean, it's just 2 AD, right? But one of the most impactful buffs Riot can give to a champion is actually base stats. And the reason why is you don't have to do literally anything for your champion to be better. And that 2 AD gets converted into more damage on your abilities and more damage on your auto attacks. They've increased the amount of movement speed on crit from his passive and increased damage on his W by 10, which is honestly not that big of a buff, but if you add everything together, you can see how he's going to move from the B tier straight up to the A tier. Now, he doesn't have a dash, so those pesky, engaged junglers, Orange jungle, Malphite jungle, yeah, you're going to suffer. Even though he's been buffed, it doesn't change his core champion. So next up, we have Miss Fortune, and she is now going to be moving from the C tier onto the B tier because of her scaling ability. So one of the biggest strengths MF has is having her R be set up by her teammates. And in solo queue, that's not as reliable as you would think it is, but 5% total AD adds 5 damage every 100 AD that Miss Fortune gets, and that stacks up. So just the fact that she is still a strong laner and she gets better scaling made me want to move her up. Beyond that, we have another mage. So Swainy is one of those abilities that if you get hit by it 1 time, 2 times, you're going to get hit by it for the rest of the game. And so this little buff adding 10 damage onto Swain is actually really big because that is his main ability to play with in laning phase. So because he was so weak in lane, Riot decided to bump up his play potential. And so now we have to deal with a little bit more mages bot lane. Following that, we have Tristana's AD scaling going up. I decided to move her from B tier to A tier because her scalability was not as good as champions like Sivir, Vayne, but you can see how this little 0.4 buff can affect the mid to late game on Tristana the more range she has. So she was never really that bad of a hyperscaler, but now that she gets this buff, she's even that much stronger later on in the game. Following this, we have Xayah and Zeri, and I did not move them on the tier list because they're champions that, yes, they did get buffs to their core mechanics. So Xayah's passive, you literally have to use it every single time whenever you use your abilities. Zeri's playability relies on her R, right? So she definitely does take advantage of this extra movement speed stack, but it does not change the fact that she's extremely low range. Xayah is also extremely low range. So they'll still really struggle in the early game. And that's the part of their kit that's been lacking for the most part. And for that reason, they're not going to be changing spots in this tier list. But hopefully, if you're a Xayah or Zeri main, in the next patch. Next up, we have Ashe. And I decided to actually not change her too much because even though the 5% turns into 15% attack speed that she's had lowered from her Q, but it does not change her core identity, which is why she's going to be staying in the B tier. Next up, we have Caitlyn. And the reason why she's not going to be moving either is because this tends to hurt her late game for the most part. And Caitlyn's advantages that she builds are usually in the early, mid, and then if she's really strong into the late game. It's still not going to change the fact that she's going to be dealing that much damage in laning phase. It's just going to hurt her later on in the game, which is not something that she's really had an issue with in these past couple of patches. For the nerfs that actually matter now, we are going to be moving on to Jinx. And so I'm going to be moving her down from the A tier down to the B tier. And my reasoning behind that is Jinx in solo queue requires you to have setup to get your passive to be able to carry team fights. Other hyperscalers have inbuilt AD steroids that make their champions OP with time, whereas Jinx needs that condition fulfilled to be able to carry as hard. So with her R reducing in base damage and in bonus AD percentage, she's now going to have that much harder of a time to get her resets, which, as I said, is a core mechanic for her. Right after that, we have our wonderful Kai'Sa, and she is also going to be moving down from the A tier down to the B tier. Reason being, Kai'Sa, just like Xayah and Zeri, has a very, very hard lane to deal with because of her lack of range. A lot of ADCs were not able to completely make her sustain a bad base because of her 27 armor. That falling down to 25 now makes it, as I said, much worse for her laning phase, which is her hardest phase of the game. She is a hyperscaler, so as long as you get to mid to late game and you have engage on your team, you're going to be fine. But it does not change the fact that Kai'Sa's laning phase is going to be hurt quite a bit by this. And her R is just that extra added salt on the wound so that when you get your R, you actually wait an extra 10 seconds for every single ultimate. And that sums it up for the buffs and nerfs of this patch. Just to go over why certain champions are in their respective tiers, we're going to start off with the S tier, where Yunara, AP Kog'Maw, and Mel are sitting. Their core mechanics have not changed. Even if the enemy team has a lot of engage, does not change the fact that Yunara R is one of the most broken ultimates in the game, giving you a dash as an AD carry and an instant Xerath Q. Nobody else in the game has that but her. So she's going to be at the top of my list. AP Kog'Maw and Mel being buff just solidifies their position at the top of this tier list, because the amount of playability you get against these champions once they get Lost Chapter is so minimal. I cannot count the amount of times I played an AD carry into a mage and I have not been able to get something off in the early game, and then they just get Lost Chapter and you can't do anything. It's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for everybody. Next up in the A tier, the top champions in this tier are dash champions for a reason, because it's solo queue. They're going to be focused more around the early to mid game. So Corki, Ezreal, and Lucian respectively have extremely good early games that tend to scale into the late game if you're able to keep up that lead. Whereas champions like Yunara that have a dash scale no matter what team comp you're playing against. So champions like Ezreal and Corki have a harder time dealing with champions like Sion because they will run out of damage due to them being spellcasters. Next up are the champions with no dashes, Jhin and Varus. They're just neutralizers that get through the lane by spamming their abilities and not really interacting with the enemy. Vayne and Tristana, typical hyperscalers, have been meta for a very long time now. You can blind them in solo queue. You might not go amazing if you're not used to the champions, but it does not change the fact that these are the top AD carries in the meta right now. Next up is Sivir and Twitch, and these two are hyperscalers that do different things. So Sivir can, once she gets on the wave, can completely nullify your ability to play lane. So she gets to scale for free when she gets access to that wave. And then Twitch is the exact opposite. He does not have wave clear unless he's able to fight you. The same way that Vayne wants to fight you because she does not have wave clear, Twitch wants to do the exact same, but has invisibility at level 1. Next up, Ziggs and Lux, typical mages that have higher range than most champions in the game. So champions like Syndra, champions like Hui, those champions are going to suffer quite a bit because their abilities cannot reach that long range. Therefore, Ziggs and Lux have much less counterplay. You can see a theme running with these mages. Next up are most of the neutralizer and then hyper carries. So the reason why they're all in this tier list is because they have either no mobility or a harder time in lane. So Ashe, MF, Jinx, Aphelios, Senna, all of them no mobility at all. And then Caitlyn and Kai'Sa are the champions that have mobility, but either lack the late game or the early game power that other champions higher in this list have. Other than that, we have the melee champions, Riven, Yasuo, Nyla. Typical, they're going to fight you. But if you want to really play a fighter bot lane, you might as well just play like a champion like Vayne and have extra range later on in the game. And then the rest of the mages are just going to be sitting here because they lack range. And so one thing that I forgot to mention was actually Hui dropping down from my last tier list. The non-interactivity of the Hui QE has absolutely gotten nuked. So just the amount of damage that you get over time from the Q has been reduced by 50 damage base, increased by 10%. Yes, of course, but does not change the fact that you're going to have to compensate for that lack of base damage with getting extra AP. It is one of the most non-interactive spells in the game because you just QE the wave twice and it's completely gone. So I completely agree with Riot's decision to do what they did. And now moving on to the crap and the D tier. These are just champions that if you want to play them, you can, but their chances of carrying the game are much lower because of their base stats being much lower and them struggling with a specific part of the game. So for example, Draven, if he's not able to cash in and get his gambling stacks in, he's going to fall behind all of the other hyperscalers. And so that's pretty much it for this patch tier list. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoy this type of content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.